In this video, we are going to discuss the use of the LDMS on the REPRIEVE project. I've started here on our public website, www.ldms.org. And to get to the application, you're going to use the link at the top right-hand corner, LDMS Login. Now, if you do not have login credentials already, that's fine. We'll discuss that at the end of the video. From here, enter in your login ID and password. You'll then be taken here to our welcome page. At the top right-hand corner, you should see your name, your lab ID, and the current time zone, as well as the logout button. In the drop-down, you can change your password, and if you click Help, you'll get to information on how to contact user support and our LDMS user manuals. We're going to go through the three main modules of the LDMS. We'll start in Specimen Management, and this is the inventory and the accessioning module. If you use the drop-down on the LDMS toolbar, your second option here is Quick Add, and this is how you will accession specimens for the REPRIEVE project. I'll give that a click, and we have our form that we will fill out to create a specimen record. Now, to facilitate data entry, the laboratory technologist on the study has worked with the laboratory data manager, and they have created templates that will place the expected specimens into this form for you. They're located up here under the template menu, but if you were to click, you will see every template that's available for our studies in the LDMS. So we're going to limit that list by applying filters. Our first filter is Project, and I'll set that to REPRIEVE. Our next filter is Protocol, and we have our main domestic study, A5332, the A5333S sub-study, and then EU5332, which is REPRIEVE in the European Union. I'll select A5332. And once these two filters are in place, I'm going to use that template menu, and I see that the list of available templates has been shortened. Next, choose the template based upon the visit and site. If you are a ACTG laboratory and site, you will use all of the templates that say ACTG sites. If you are a non-network site, you will utilize all of the non-network templates. I'm going to select the A5332 entry template for non-network for this example. Once you choose a template, we have this confirmation message asking us if we would like to load the template data. It will clear out any data that has been previously entered. And that means that you should always get your template first before you input any data into the form, because it will just be cleared out once you do select a template. Below that, we have our template comments. And we see that we are to ship to Bri per our assigned schedule, as well as documenting the processing start and freeze times in the LDMS. We'll talk about that in Specimen Management. Once you click yes, those template comments will populate the gray box at the top as a reminder while you work through the form. We start at the top under participant information, and we will enter in our ID1, or our PID, our participant identifier. Moving to enrollment information, here the A5332 study name has already been placed into the field. So we go to our visit information, and I'll place in my ID3, which is our study identifier. Now the participant will have an umbrella identifier for the entire project and be issued a secondary identifier that will go into this field. I do not have one available as yet for this participant ID, so I'm going to put in a placeholder. Below ID3, we have our clinic. So these are the clinics associated with your processing lab. This information will be present on the header of the ECRF. You'll have the participant ID, clinic, study ID, etc., as well as our collection date. This is the date of draw. Once I have placed that date in the field, I'm asked if I'd like to process this to our received date, processing date, and frozen date. So I will click yes. And if you follow my mouse, you'll see my receive date fields have all been entered for me. The visit value and visit unit also come along with the template. So now we get to our last two grids, the primary grid and our aliquot grid. So our primaries are the whole blood specimens or tubes that are coming from the clinic that will be processed into their components or their aliquots. So if I highlight this first primary here, I see I have a serum separator tube. It's a whole blood specimen, whole blood primary, and a serum separator additive. If I move my mouse down to the aliquot grid, I see I'm going to create one aliquot of serum. The fourth field here, the sub-additive derivative, if there is a further process or another additive that is going to be placed in that cryoval tube, that would be encoded here. So they're all encoded with these three-letter abbreviations. And as you hover, you'll have a brief description on what those abbreviations mean. We're going to move to our collection time field and enter in the time of draw. This is a 24-hour clock. So after you enter the 2 digits for the hour, a colon will appear and you'll enter in 2 digits for the minutes. If all of the samples have the same collection time, you can copy by using Control-C and paste down the fields. Same with our received time. This is the time of reception at the laboratory. So a 24-hour clock, we'll paste down until we get to the last primary. Now this is enough information to click the Add button and receive your labels. In this menu, I have my project is REPRIEVE. My format is the REPRIEVE format, so that is the label format that was set up by the project. My laser label size, so these are the 8.5 by 11 label sheets that will be fed through a laser printer. My last field here, the skip field, if you have a partially used sheet of labels, you will enter in the number of empty spaces on that sheet, and then the LDMS will adjust for that when it creates your labels. I'm going to click Generate. I see that a PDF is available. I'm going to click Save and then Open. Here is the PDF file of my labels. And if I go ahead and enlarge so we can review the content, at the top here I have my Global Specimen ID. Now that is the unique identifier that is issued by the LDMS for all of the samples in the database. We'll talk about that a little more in Specimen Management. My second line, I have my PID and my study, my collection dates and time. Then I have those sample abbreviations, so my primary, additive, derivative, and sub-additive derivative. The last line, I have my volume and volume unit, as well as my visit and visit unit. So you go ahead and click Print in Adobe Reader and make sure that your laser labels are loaded and print that to your laser printer. Back on our screen here, I'll click Close for this pop-up window, and we're going to go into Specimen Management. In Specimen Management, all of the data is organized by project and participant ID. And we see that here in the top center of the screen. I have a total of 20 participants in my LDMS. If I move to the right, I can go through each one of the pages that represents a participant on that project. If I know my participant, I can go ahead and click Jump To and enter in my project and my participant ID. I'll click Jump To, and here we have the record that we've accessioned today. Now only one visit is showing here in my visit grid. If there were multiple, You could limit your view to only the collection date or visit you want to see by applying filters. After the jump, we see the participant that we accessioned together. Over here to the left, I see my project and my PID. This information is static because that is how the LDMS organizes or indexes the specimen records. I see my ID2 or my protocol. And after that, I have 3 grids. And these 3 grids represent the same boxes we saw in the quick add form. We have our visit grid with our visit and visit unit, our collection date, the ID3 or study identifier, and our clinic. Once you highlight a visit in blue, you'll see the primary specimens collected at the visit. And if you highlight a primary in blue, you'll see the aliquots that were created from that primary. Now moving from left to right in the primary grid, we start with our global specimen ID that we saw on our label. This is the only identifier that is issued by the LDMS, the only specimen identifier that is issued by the LDMS. And it starts with the originating lab ID. So all of your specimens from your laboratory will start with your lab code, then a serial number, and a sequence number. All of the primaries end in 000. And if we follow my mouse down to the aliquot grid, I see that the global specimen ID has the same lab ID, the same serial number, but starts at 001 and can go up to 999. After the global specimen ID, we have our status icons. And our first status icon here is the availability icon. If I hover over these gray circles, I see that the specimen is no longer available. But if I move to the aliquot grid, I see a green check mark, and that specimen is still available. So why is the primary no longer available? Because we processed it into its components, and we have the serum aliquots from that primary that are available. Our next icon is the freezer icon. If highlighted, it means that the specimen is stored. We have our envelope icon. And there are 2 different highlights here. One with a paperclip that will show that the specimen is on a shipping batch, and another with a red arrow, which shows that the specimen has been shipped. Our next 2 icons, we have a clipboard. It means a test is assigned, or this 2-person icon is the co-enrollment. Maybe you have a participant who's also on the sub-study. You can share the primary between those studies. We have our collection time, the primary, additive, specimen condition code, and the volume unit. We saw that information in quick add. Just to finish up the screen, we'll go to the aliquot grid. We've already discussed the global specimen ID and the status icons, but at this level, we record the derivative. So how was the specimen processed? The sub-additive derivative. Each aliquot has its own condition code and volume unit. Now, as I was moving through this screen, everything here is display only. So as I click, nothing changes. But what if you have to make a change to the specimen record, or you had to add new information? That information is placed in these edit buttons over to the right-hand side of the screen. We were instructed by our template to enter in the processing date and time and the frozen date and time. And those fields are available within these edit menus. So let's take this first specimen here, our serum separator tube. I'll click the edit button. I'm at the primary level. And at the primary level is where you record the processing date and time. I'll enter in my processing time here under the specimen processing details, and I will click Save. At the aliquot level is where we record the frozen date and time. So if I click the edit button here and I scroll through, I'll find my frozen date and my frozen time. I'll click Save. They'll be updated for that aliquot. You can also edit multiple aliquots at once. So here I have 4 Serum aliquots, if I highlight them in blue, I can go into one of the edit buttons, and it doesn't matter which one, and I'll give it a click. And in this modified menu, I can open up the data field by using the checkbox, enter in the new information, and click Save, and it will be applied to any of the aliquots highlighted in blue. In the Edit drop-down menu, you can access your labels. So if I click Print Label here, I will get a replacement label for this one aliquot. If I go up a level to the primary and click Print Aliquot Labels, I will get all 4 serum aliquot labels from that primary. If I go up even further to the visit level and I click Print Labels, I'll get replacement labels for all of the specimens from that visit. One last thing to cover in specimen management is the filter panel we see over here to the left. This is how you will search to find specimen records. And we have several filters available, so we've separated them out by category, such as participant filters, where you have your project and PID or ID1, your enrollment filters, where you have your study, your visit filters, where you can filter by the visit value, visit unit, or the collection date. Specimen filters, you can filter by the global specimen ID. Now, since the global specimen ID belongs to one aliquot, that is the most restrictive filter you can put in place. We also have our primary, additive, derivative, and sub-additive derivative filters here, our availability filter, and the received date filter. Just like the collection date filter that's present in visit, these are quick filters you can put in place to find all the specimens that belong to one collection or receive date. Shipment filters, you can find all the specimen records belonging to a particular shipment, which is organized by shipment number. Or storage filters, you can gather together all the specimen records belonging to a storage item, such as a freezer, shelf, rack, or box. Now let's move into storage, and we're going to assign a storage position to the samples that we have collected today. You access storage by using the Store menu part of the LDMS toolbar, drop down and select Stored Samples. Here you will see your virtual freezer. Every laboratory's freezer page is different because it represents the layout and the capacity of your storage at your lab. Now, in my example freezer, I have 2 shelves that I have built. One that contains stainless steel racks, and another one where I can place the boxes directly onto the shelf. So work with senior staff at your lab to figure out the layout of your freezer. As I said, this freezer is just an example, and you'll want to discuss with senior staff at your lab how your freezers are organized. In the LDMS, the freezer is laid out as a tree from largest to smallest. So at the top, we have our freezer, shelf, rack, and then I'm going to place a box onto that rack to store our specimens. Over to the right in the Edit drop-down, I'm going to select Add New Container. The first question is how many containers do we wish to add? So I will add in 1. From Template, here you'll see a list of the different boxes available at your lab. So I'm going to choose this 9x9 cryo box. And once you make that selection, the rest of the menu is filled in for you, just as the template in Quick Add filled in a majority of the fields within Specimen Management. I see a 2D image of my box, and then I can click Continue. My next menu, I'm asked to give my box a name. And then give my box a position on the rack. So in this position menu, the first available space will be highlighted for you in light blue, but you can override it by choosing any of the open spaces. click continue, the box will be brought into your storage tree. Now let's store our samples into that container. So at the box level, I'll go to the Edit drop-down menu and select Store Specimens. In this menu, you will apply filters and then choose the specimens you wish to store from the list at the bottom. So let's apply a visit filter with a collection date of today. And this will show me all of the samples that I have accessioned. Choose the samples by selecting the checkbox over to the left. If you want everything in the list, you may click Select All. In the bottom right-hand corner of the screen is the page size. So it's set to 20 samples per page, but you can increase it if you have more samples that you are working with. Below the list, I see that I have space left in my box for 70 more specimens. So this keeps a running count of how many empty spaces you have in your box. I will click Continue, and then I have my position selection menu. I can click Autofill, and it will take each of these 11 specimens and fill my box from left to right according to the fill order of the container. Now all of my samples are in position. Next, let's discuss how you move specimens in the storage menu. We have a special menu for that, and it is here in the Action drop-down. Click Move Storage Items, migrate through the freezer to find the items that you wish to move. So the only rule is you must move like storage items. So if I select this container, I can no longer select a rack or shelf. And the same thing would go if you were to select multiple specimens. You can no longer select the box or rack. Once you have your storage item chosen, click the Next button, and you will be presented with the Destination menu. Let me move this box to Rack 2 by clicking Select, and I'll give my box a position by clicking Continue. At the top of our storage tree is the Auto Assign Positions. If this is checked, you will no longer see the Position Selection menu. You will be assigned a position automatically within storage. The last thing I'd like to discuss before we leave this module is our filters over here to the left. And this will be the way you can find your specimens again once they are in storage. Now, our top category here, the storage filters, these filters here apply to the storage tree. So if I want to find a container, I'll use my specimen container name filter, select the name, my storage tree will refresh, and as I expand, I'll see that storage item that applies to that filter. The remaining filters apply to the specimens within storage. So if I expand my participant filter category and apply a PID, the tree will refresh, and it will show me any storage item with specimens belonging to that filter. Now let's move to our shipping module. This is the way we mobilize our samples out of our laboratory and send them to the biorepository for long-term storage. Now the shipping menu is split into three: pending shipments, where we'll create a new batch; receive shipments, where we can import specimens; and shipment history, which has a record of all of our shipments from our laboratory, things sent and received. We'll start at pending shipments, and in the Add New drop-down, we'll click Create Shipment. Your shipment schedule is set by your study, so you'll have a set time when you need to send these storage boxes out from your laboratory. We start in the pending shipment preview window with our 5 tabs. Under the General tab, we'll enter our shipment date. So this is the intended ship date, and you can set a future date by selecting it from the calendar. We have our shipping file format. So our LDMS shipping file is a proprietary shipping file format for sending specimens to LDMS labs, and the biorepository on this study is an LDMS lab, so we'll set that format. And our temperature. So under shipping destination, our labs are organized by lab number, and I've typed in lab number 999 for the Biomedical Research Institute, and I'll give that a click. And then under contact person, I'll select the contact that's built into the menu. Contact at sending lab, you will see your lab ID as well as anyone you have designated as a shipping contact at your lab. We have our shipment notes where you can enter in a comment, a disclaimer. You can place in the shipment carrier and tracking number if it's known at this time. Then we get to shipment contents. And here's where we can send our boxes from our freezer. We have 2 options here, the shipping containers. This is when you select individual samples and you build your own shipping container, and storage containers. These are our items from storage. So in that second option, I'll click Add New, and I'll expand my freezer until I see the container I want to ship. So select the container using the checkbox, and click Add Selected to Shipment in the top right-hand corner. In the bottom center of this menu, I'll click Save, and a new shipment will be created and assigned a shipment number. We see in this grid all the settings from that menu: our shipping file format, the destination lab, shipment temperature, our setup date, and shipment date. The last option here is QAQC, and it says Not Performed. The QAQC process is the verification of the contents of the container against the shipping manifest, and we have a special menu for that. That is located in the Edit Ship dropdown. Select QAQC. At the top of the menu, if there are multiple boxes within your shipment, you'll be able to toggle through them by using this dropdown. Over to the left, you'll see a 2D image that represents your box, and over to the right, you'll see the manifest information, starting with the position and the global specimen ID. So you will take the box, place it in a dry ice bath, maintaining the chain of cold. You will then take the sample out of this highlighted space, verify the global specimen ID on the cryovial against the one that you see here on the screen. And if they are the same, you will click Pass Specimen. Replace the cryovial into the position, move to the next position, and remove the cryovial and compare the global specimen ID. If it's the same, click Pass Specimen. And you continue that process until you have verified the contents of the shipment. This prevents inventory issues both at your lab and at the receiving lab. At the bottom of the menu, I will click Save. And since I've checked every specimen within the shipment, my QAQC status says Complete. We move to the last part of the shipping process, creating the LDMS shipping file and getting our final paperwork. To do that, we return to the Preview Shipment window by clicking the Edit Ship button. At the bottom of the menu, to the left of the Save button, we'll click Ship. Confirm that you're ready to ship this pending shipment. And I see a file has been downloaded. I will click Save, and that will go into my Downloads folder. I'll click OK for the alert. and close to close the pop-up window. My pending shipment page will refresh, and my batch is now gone. It has now been moved to the shipment history page. I see it here, and I can tell by my unique batch number. If I go to the right and drop down, I can get my shipment paperwork, my manifest, and my shipment container report. If I need another copy of the shipping file, I can click Download Shipping File at the bottom. Both the manifest and the container report are PDF, so if you click Generate at the bottom, a PDF will be downloaded into your Downloads folder. I'll click Save, and let's open to review this manifest. This is the paperwork that will be placed in the shipper along with the specimens. So at the top, we have our shipment information. We see that QAQC is complete. Shipment says yes, and we have our ship date as well as a list of all the samples in our shipment. We close this. So that is the workflow for the processing of samples within the LDMS for REPRIEVE. Do a session within Specimen Management and assign a storage position to those samples within storage. When it is time to ship according to your schedule, you go into the shipping module, you create a new batch in which you place that storage container. It is then sent to the biorepository and you continue accessioning samples for the study. Before I leave you, I'm going to go to our public website again, www.ldms.org. There are no login credentials needed to access just this site. There are many training materials and resources that we have created for our laboratories, and they're available in these two menus. Under Resources, if you go to the project page, you'll be able to access the REPRIEVE project and more documentation under that menu. The last thing is the Contact Us button. If you have any issues or questions about the LDMS, please contact our user support department. You can reach them by phone, by email, or you can use this form. Always use your laboratory ID when contacting your support, regardless of the method. If you need login credentials, send an email to ldmshelp@fistrift.org and include your lab supervisor so that they can vet the access to your database. So thank you for taking the time to watch, and please do not hesitate to reach out with any of your questions.